For you, it was an episode of GameRaveTV. For me, it was a Tuesday. Hey everyone, it's Jason from GameRave.com, otherwise known as Danger Boy, and this is GameRaveTV. Alright guys, welcome back. This episode we are going to discuss the Where Are They Now segment, talking about the original items from the PlayStation's launch day leading up to September 9th. And today we're going to discuss Street Fighter the movie and Ballerina Toshinden. Now, if you weren't there for the launch of the PlayStation 20 years ago, by today's standards, Ballerina Toshinden seems fairly silly. It's a 3D fighting game, one-on-one, just like Tekken, and Soul Calibur and Soul Blade and so forth, but it looks and plays cheesily. But here's the problem. That's by today's standards. 20 years ago, when the game launched with the PlayStation, it was the game that basically made people stand up and go, whoa, those are some pretty good graphics, especially when compared to Virtua Fighter on the Saturn. So what made Toshinden special, especially from the graphics department? Well, there's a whole laundry list full of things. One, the characters were actual 3D. Now, Virtua Fighter had that going for it too, but Toshinden also provided actual 3D backgrounds. In most fighting games at the time, you had a 3D background, or 3D platform, and then the background was like just a couple of flat layers designed to look sort of 3D. In Toshinden, you had the 3D waterfalls, you had the towers in the background, you also had crazy special effects like the sky stage that had the swirling winds, you had the crazy boss stage with the checkerboard and the warp and so forth. And at the time, this was just unseen. Like, it was a graphical tour de force. From a gameplay standpoint, Toshinden was actually kind of a weird hybrid creature. It was 3D, like Virtua Fighter and Tekken, but it used Street Fighter commands, like rolling fireballs and the uppercut motions to do its special moves. It also had some actual 3D plane maneuvers, like the dodge and roll function. This thrown together made it one of the most eye-popping, jaw-dropping, fun-to-play games, and one of the best launch games ever be included with a system. There was just one small problem. As time went on and the sequels began coming out, you began to realize that it wasn't as fluid as it could be, especially when compared to newer games like Tekken and, to be honest, Street Fighter Alpha 2 and 3. As Toshinden reached its second sequel, number 3 on the PlayStation, the series had grown really just broken and disparate from its original source material. Graphics were weird, HUD displays were weird, it didn't flow together real well. Funny enough, diehard game fan, who was one of the original Toshinden's just staunchest supporters, eventually admitted years later that it was probably one of their most overhyped and overrated games of all time. So, where is Toshinden now? Sadly, pretty much dead in the water. In its heyday, it actually had 2 sequels on the Saturn, it had a couple of games on the Game Boy, and years later on the Wii in Japan, it actually had a sort of sequel with, which I didn't get a chance to play, but I didn't hear very good things about it. The one thing Toshinden always had going for it was its character designs. They were awesome, and not just from an actual, like, design aesthetic, but just a look. And if at the time they had been able to get the character designer and the artist to get a 2D game going, it would have been beautiful, especially with some of Toshinden 2's characters. But sadly, it's basically a series that seems to have been lost to time. It's fairly unlikely we'll ever see another Toshinden again, unless Sony delays every other PS4 game coming out this year. That brings up Street Fighter the movie. Now, I know I've talked about this game before, and it's actually on my website, and I know I've had this discussion before with a bunch of people online. Street Fighter the movie is one of the most, at least for me, the most beloved, just gorgeous disasters you'll ever see. The original arcade game was essentially a Mortal Kombat ripoff. It was a lot darker, a little bit scarier. When Capcom decided to bring it home to the consoles, instead of doing the arcade port, they essentially scrapped the entire thing and instead redid the animations and did all new backgrounds and borrowed the voiceovers and moves and basically turned the game into Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo, the movie edition. And it's really cool. Now, obviously, the game does have its problems. A lot of the fill-in animation that they use to try and bring the timing back up to speed clearly doesn't match the original animation frames from the arcade. It's very rough around the edges too as far as graphics and text and dialogue goes, but here's the cool thing. When they tried to repair the game, for lack of a better term, they added some extra things that weren't in the arcade, and it's really fun. Like, there's what's called the movie battle. You basically play Jean-Claude Van Damme's Guile, and you follow the plot of the movie kind of loosely. But what makes it really cool is that you can actually have alternate paths. So when you get to a certain point, you can either say follow Chun-Li or follow Ken, and you'll battle a different situation and keep going and have another choice here and there, where if you went to the alternate route, you'd have different characters to fight too. If you play in Street Battle mode, which is essentially just Street Fighter, they actually wrote all the endings for the characters based on the movie script and not the original source material. So you actually get a little bit of closure that you wouldn't have found in the movie, which I thought was really, really nifty and really nice thing to do to try and bring it all together. But anything else, you can just go read the review, what have you. As far as the collector standpoint, Toshinden is a dime a dozen. It has a whole bunch of variants too, including some very rare ones, which involve stickers. Just check the webpage. Street Fighter the movie, however, is unique in that it's one of the only long boxes to never have a variant of any other kind. There's no greatest hits, there's no jewel case, there's no Ridge long box. It's literally just the original Saturn case style long box. Pretty neat to have from a collecting standpoint. You can find Toshinden fairly cheaply. Street Fighter can usually go for about 10 to 30 bucks based on the condition. To this day, I will defend it as being a great, and I'm talking about Street Fighter here, to this day, I will defend it as being just a great version of, you know, the original Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo. What's funny is if you're watching this video within the last, say, month of the news, Street Fighter's fallen a long way, especially considering this is the Where Are They Now. Ever since the PlayStation 2 era, Capcom really has lost sight of what to do with Street Fighter. And when Street Fighter 4 came to be, it was almost like a rebirth. And I loved the original Street Fighter 4. And then they started doing the old school thing of releasing 19 different versions and patches. And now with Street Fighter 5 being a Sony exclusive and Ultra Super Street Fighter 4 whatever edition is fairly broken at the time of this recording, I don't know. Street Fighter may be on its last legs as far as things are concerned, and from that point, I think Capcom might be on its last legs. But that's another story for another time. Alright guys, with the Where Are They Now segment, that just leaves Ridge Racer for an eventual episode, and then we've got the system itself, which I am saving for September. So that being said, we'll see you guys next week with Pause Mode. Have a great week. Take care, you guys.